Hello, everyone, and welcome to the War for Talent webinar. My name is Saxon Baum, and I am here with my business partner, Taylor Wallace. We are going to be discussing today how you can win the war for talent that is currently happening in today's job world. We're going to talk about meaningful experiences. We're going to talk about culture. We're going to talk about how to leverage that culture. The first thing I would say is check out our infographic if you have not done so yet. You can find that at www.wevue.com/blog. It will be the top post right there. I would encourage you to check that out because this webinar is going to talk about how to win that war. We're going to take a deeper dive into that infographic. And without further ado, let's get into some introductions. As I said before, my name is Saxon Baum, and I am the co-founder here at WeVue. I take care of a lot of the sales and marketing at WeVue, and formerly I did marketing at VH1 and ran a fairly large sales team for Extreme Trips for several years. Today we're going to be talking a lot about meaning, a lot about experiences. So to kick it off, I really wanted to let everybody know the real meaning for me for coming to work every day. What is it for me? It's teamwork. And you can see it right at the bottom right there. Teamwork is dream work. I truly believe that, and I love to see my team work together. I think that's what has really helped us become successful. The other piece is experience. What experience and what experiences get me up every morning, get me excited to come to work? It's really building a business. I absolutely love the idea of building a company from the ground up, taking something from conception to and through success. I really think that is something that is very exciting, and that's something that we really strive to do here at WeVue. I'm going to pass it over here to my partner, Taylor Wallace, so he can give you his introduction.
Hi everyone, my name is Taylor Wallace. I manage product and design here at WeVue. I formerly have worked with a lot of startups. My last full-time position was at a company in New York called Brillig, where I mostly managed accounts, but I also did a lot of content and design work for them, some product work as well. I'm also involved with an organization called Startup Bus, and it's basically a hackathon / startup incubator that happens on buses, where we take designers, developers, and marketers and help them build companies in 3 days on a road trip. And for me, the why, the meaning is all about telling stories. I have a background in storytelling. That's really where my passion lies. And what excites me so much about WeVue, and we'll tell you a little bit more about what we do, is helping companies tell their stories, attribute meaning to what they do, make their workplaces better, around designing new narratives that talk about why their work matters. And why their stories matter. And the experience for me is really about working with people that value those stories, that want to create great companies and great narratives around those companies, and make them better and more attractive places to work. Also, to kind of tack onto that, Saxon and I are both millennials. We're going to be talking throughout the webinar in the first person about how we're building a product that our peers want to use, but also how we really want companies to kind of be thinking about the ways with which they can attribute meaning and create amazing experiences for a younger demographic of new workers that are coming into the workforce and are not working 9 to 5s. They don't want that traditional 20 years of climbing a corporate ladder, and how you can slightly tweak your culture to accommodate that.
And with that being said, we know everyone is not Google, and that's not what everyone's trying to be. We're going to give you some actionable items, some things that you all can put in place to truly help you enhance that culture. So hit us on Facebook. We have Twitter going live at WeVue, and then we're also very active on LinkedIn. What is the war for talent? If you look it up in the dictionary, the war for talent is an increasingly competitive landscape for recruiting and retaining talent. It is going on in every industry right now. Everyone is seeing this. For this webinar, we will be referring to the current war for talent as recruiting millennial talent. We're going to look at the current battlefield and how to leverage corporate culture to win the war for talent. The battlefield, what's it looking like? Y'all hear about it. Let's talk a little bit about it. By 2025, 75% of your workforce will be millennials. By 2020, employers will be 18 million college-educated workers short. With baby boomers retiring over the next 10 to 20 years, this war for talent situation is getting no better. It's getting worse. It's getting harder, and we are going to help you prepare for this war. Millennials, you think you know them? Let's talk a little bit about what we love and what we do. 60% of your millennials or us will leave your company in the next 3 years. Currently, 77% of all your millennials are looking for another job while working at your job, and it costs about $15,000 to $20,000 to recruit, hire, train a millennial, and then you end up losing 60% of them within the next 3 years. Taylor, I know that you have seen this. I've seen it. Tell us a little bit about your friends and how they have felt right into these stats.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing. I mean, you talk to a lot of young people, especially those that are very technically inclined. They're very sought after in the job marketplace. They're getting offers from corporations, Wall Street banks, Silicon Valley startups. We personally, as employers, have experienced it as well. And the thing that's amazing is they're constantly on the lookout for something that could be better, something that could, attribute a little bit more of a cultural experience for them, could get them to a new city. So what we believe, though, is that by creating a really compelling culture, you can help keep these millennials for longer, make them more productive, and save that $15,000 to $20,000 it costs to train people.
It's not cheap. I mean, once again, as Taylor just said, we see this all the time with our friends. I have friends that have had 4 or 5 different jobs since college, and that was only 5 years ago. One thing, millennials are not interested in a 9 to 5. They don't just want to clock in and clock out. They want that life-work balance. It's really all about loving what you do and creating meaningful experiences within that. So what are we looking for? We're looking for culture. 97% of candidates believe it's just as, if not more important than compensation. We're looking for a place that we can connect with, a place that our values outside the office mean as much as they do outside as they do inside. We have a great story to tell you. Recently in the news, I don't know how many people have heard this, Taylor's going to tell this story, but there has been a great example of how compensation does not win the war for talent.
So many of you may have seen the story of Dan Price at Gravity Payments. Basically what happened is Dan runs a software company, and he was out hiking with a friend who makes about $45,000 a year, and he learned about how hard it is for her to pay her bills. And he started reading about income inequality in the United States and thought that he could create a better company with more satisfied employees if he raised the minimum wage at his organization to $70,000 a year. This was all over the web. People were praising it as kind of a bold move in income inequality, and kind of trying to squash that. And what's inevitably happened in the last few weeks is that it's come out that workers at his organization have been extremely dissatisfied. They don't think this is fair. He's losing money left and right because he's had to increase salary. He didn't really consult any of his employees before he did this. He kind of just sprung it on them. He's actually now getting sued by his brother, who's a 30% shareholder in the business.
The whole thing backfired.
Yeah, it came out as this awesome idea. We were even excited about it. We thought it was a great concept, and then it really has kind of come to fruition that it's not about the money.
It really isn't. And just to read off some quotes that his employees said, he gave raises to people who have the least skills and are least equipped to do the job. The ones who are taking on the most didn't give much of a bump at all. So what does this mean? This means he's essentially handing out money and rewarding people for something that they didn't do. Clearly not a good idea.
The thing, this quote ties it in as well. Now the people who are just clocking in and out are making the same as me, plus having your pay level a very public matter is a problem, with friends now calling me for a loan. One of the examples that we heard about this that was really interesting was a web developer there. He was a junior web developer. I believe he was making about $50,000 before this raise came into place. And he came out and said, I really want to improve my skills, and I'm worried that the motivation to improve just got taken away from me. I'm now much more complacent in my work. I'm not as motivated to learn. I essentially didn't level up to make this new salary. It was just handed to me. So again, it goes back to, instead of really attributing meaning to the work that they were doing there, providing a competitive compensation plan that allowed them to kind of grow through the ranks, he just sprung this higher wage on everyone. And it really made a lot of the best employees feel like it wasn't fair, because they were getting paid by the same wage as some of the people that weren't working as hard. The people that had been there a long time didn't get massive raises. Some of the newer people that maybe weren't as qualified to make this much money. It really is just a great example of how compensation is not the key to building a successful organization. I think too, it dives into the fact that a lot of what we're talking about today, that millennials, Saxon and I, and hopefully a lot of the young adults that you're talking to out there, are motivated by purpose and value, not money or your profits. It's about, again, this meaning, these experiences. How can I be contributing to an organization that is in some way making someone else's life a better place?
The old story is true with this. Throwing cash at a problem doesn't fix it. Usually it just makes it worse. And that is truly what has happened with this situation.
So to touch on what is culture, it's this word that we kind of hear all the time, all over the internet. It's so culturally referenced, to use a little double entendre there, that Merriam-Webster actually made it the word of the year in 2014. That's how prevalent it's been recently. So the way that we define it here as a company that builds software around culture is it's the way that you do things, and expanding upon that, it's really what the collective belief around what right looks like across various business processes, as well as the people operation in your organization. And that's not to say that it's right all the time.
By no means. It's the way that things are done. You can have an amazing culture, or you can have a broken culture. We talk to countless executives, countless HR managers and marketing managers who believe that their culture is strong, and then when we really take a deep dive, it's pretty apparent that they don't even know what their culture's like.
Absolutely. And I think we're going to dive into kind of 3 points here in a minute that talk about how you can kind of do some interesting things with your culture. But I think the key takeaway from a lot of the way that Saxon and I feel and what we're getting at is that millennials and us, we want to work with you, not for you. And that doesn't mean you go out and you hire a 22-year-old and you make him a manager or a vice president. It means that you create a workplace that provides autonomy, ownership, the ability to give feedback. One of the things that came out of the Amazon argument this weekend that a lot of employees were rebuttaling the New York Times Post was that as an intern, you can go into Jeff Bezos' office and tell him that an idea he has is wrong. Or you can propose an idea to a senior manager and it will be taken into consideration if you have the data and the wherewithal to back it up.
And that is giving value. That's empowering employees. Here's a great stat. I absolutely love this. 47% of millennials work in companies with less than 100 people. Do we think that's because they're getting paid more? No. If anything, they're getting paid less, but they're doing it because their voice is being heard. They have value coming out of what they're doing, and there's true meaning that's going into these companies and going into their thoughts.
So going back to these 3 points, the first one we're going to talk about with the story is how you create this meaning. And we believe it's not about what you build and sell, it's why and how you do it. And if you're a business and you exist in the marketplace and you provide value for a customer, then you're doing something that is meaningful, and you can tell a great story around what that is. And the first example we're going to give you is an interesting one. The second thing we believe is that culture is about experiences, it's not things. The common anecdotes are, Google gives massages and they have nap rooms, or X company has free food and booze, and I get a company car if I go work here, and a gym membership. We don't believe that's culture. That's just throwing money in a different form at the problem. Providing experience is really how you build a robust organization culturally. And finally, we're going to give you some insight into how you can know the battlefield better. So many of the young technically minded people that we talk to and that we work with get bombarded with job offers and recruiters. And we think that if you can find the people where they live in a more interesting fashion that's not as aggressive and follow up with them in a really meaningful way, that you'll be able to recruit better talent.
Once again, it's all about providing meaning. That's what it's all about. So Taylor, without further ado, let's hop into some of these stories, look at some of these companies that I'm sure everyone will recognize, So let's get going.
So the first company we'd like to talk about is Quicken Loans, and it's led by a guy by the name of Dan Gilbert. And the thing that we found really fascinating about Quicken Loans is that they're essentially a bank. I mean, they are a home loan company.
It's nothing beautiful about this. This is a home loan company, just like a Citibank, just like a Bank of America. They're providing residential loans.
The financial services, essentially.
Yes.
But what they've created is an organization that has an incredible culture. They have 12,000 employees, 1,200 of which are engineers. So one of the stories that they tell about themselves is that they're not a home loan company, they're a technology company. If you're looking to solve hard technical problems, you need to talk about how that's what you're looking to do. And that's, going to attract people that find meaning in solving those technology problems.
Now, not only is the industry not the most exciting, but this is not an easy company to work at. You're working 50, 60 hours a week. You have a sales quota.
It's a very sales-driven organization. They work their people very hard, but you'll find countless anecdotes of people that have loved the experience of working there. It's also a massive company. I mean, it was initially founded by Dan. He sold it to Intuit, which is the company that owns QuickBooks. He then bought it back. The other thing that's really interesting about Quicken Loans is they're based in Detroit. Those 12,000 employees are all in Detroit. And what he's done there is he's not only provided meaning and working for his company, but he's provided meaning in creating a company in Detroit. He's one of the largest real estate owners in the city. He's very much encouraging people to move there, not just to work for Quicken Loans, but to really be a part of what he's calling this new renaissance in Detroit and in the United States. They're taking a former automotive technology hub and they're turning it into a tech hub for the 21st century. And you will be a part of this new renaissance in America and in Detroit if you come join him on his mission.
And it's so much more than providing loans. This is so much more meaningful than just providing a home loan. You're working for a bigger purpose. You're working for something that really is making a difference.
So one of the quotes that we found from him that we really liked is that we're trying to make everything you do here an experience. Whatever you do here, you can't find in the suburbs. And he's actually talking about the city of Detroit, but what we found so interesting about this quote is that it really applies to the company as well. So much of what they do in the organization is about creating this experience, creating these meanings, and things that you can't find in other companies or in other cities or outside of the heart of their organization. And this is not a small company. I mean, they do $140 billion in loans a year. And I think, too, what they do is they really put Dan at the forefront, and he takes the reins and says that, I'm not just a figurehead of this organization. One of the things that we found out while doing research for the webinar is that during every new hire onboarding class, he personally, this guy's a billionaire, spends 8 to 10 hours with each class talking about the values of the organization.
He's not coming in for a 10-minute speech. He is literally, with every single one, helping them get acquainted to that organization. And that's culture right there.
Absolutely. He talks a lot in aphorisms, so these short little one-liners, and their core value is in their kind of tagline is one of those, and it's every client, every time, no exceptions, no excuses. We found another quote that we love by him too that I think really embodies a lot of what we're talking about, and it's, if you believe tomorrow will be more exciting than today, then you've discovered what passion really means. And I think that really embodies what he's trying to create, not only at Quicken Loans, but in his company, but also in the city of Detroit, and what we think you can do for your employees. What can you provide in the way of a story that makes them feel like tomorrow's going to be more exciting than the work I did today, and I can't wait to wake up for it. Finally, to give you a takeaway, something that we think you can do, a lot of those aphorisms that Dan speaks in at Quicken are taken and they're put into a book once a year, and it's that book on the right called Isms in Action. And it basically is essentially a very well-designed book of one-liners that attribute a lot of what he says to their culture and what they believe and what it means. Zappos also does this. Theirs is more like a yearbook, so they'll basically compile a bunch of photos and videos from their employees and put together this yearbook that they give out. You can actually email Zappos and they'll send you one.
Yeah, they'll send you one for free because they want people to know what it's like to work there, and they want it from the employee's perspective. So that's what they're doing. They're crowdsourcing content from their employees they are putting it in this book where they now have a cultural reference so that anybody that starts there new, immediately they're introduced to that culture, they're brought into that culture. The Facebook story is actually my favorite.
So yeah, the Facebook story is really interesting. They found, the line on the cover says it all. Facebook was not originally created to be a company, but they became a massive one. And what they found is a few things as they were growing and trying to onboard new employees. The first was that they got to a point where they were hiring employees that were young enough not to remember Facebook being invented. So they didn't know why Facebook was founded. They knew they were coming to work for the biggest social network in the world, but they didn't know why it existed. And furthermore, they didn't know what the vision of the organization was. So Mark Zuckerberg was not happy with this. He went out and hired a master printer, brought him in. They set up a silk screen and printing studio in the office. Any employee could come in whenever they wanted and learn about the art of printing. And they essentially crowdsourced a book that described the history of Facebook, what it means as an organization, what it means to work there, what their core values are, and where they're going. And this was crowdsourced by inviting the employees to come in and make it. And they took the best of those prints that came out of that print shop. And that print shop is actually still there, and anyone can kind of go do that. But the thing that's incredible about this is every new hire comes in, and they're immediately presented with the history of Facebook and the future of Facebook.
And that's their culture right there.
Right there.
They are immediately shown that culture. So for everyone out there, we know you're not Facebook, you might not be Zappos, Quicken Loans. You can do this yourself. You can get pictures either from your Facebook page or from employees, have them emailed to you, crowdsource them somehow. You can get those photos. You can go to Shutterfly and you can make one of these books. You then could have an awesome cultural reference, define your culture, put a stake in the ground to truly show people what you're all about.
I think the key is just it's good storytelling. It's why does your organization exist?
It has to be.
What kind of value do you deliver to the marketplace? And what's going to get me excited about waking up in the morning to come work for you? At Quicken Loans, it's the idea that I'm going to help a first-time home buyer get a home with his new wife or her new husband. I'm going to come in and I'm going to work on a really interesting technical problem as an engineer. And I think any organization, what we've been harping on from the beginning, that provides value in the marketplace to customers can talk about and define and showcase what that means.
Not even a question. And as Taylor said, it's all about storytelling. I would stress this all day. Storytelling is the most powerful way to get your point across. We ready to move on?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Next point.
So SendGrid is one of my favorite organizations to talk about from a cultural perspective. They basically they're a very tech-heavy company. They basically sell tools to developers that empower anyone developing software to send transactional email. So if you get an email from Pinterest saying
after you pin a board,
yeah,
you get an automatic email.
Absolutely. So all that transactional automatic email that happens from a lot of software companies, a ton of it is powered by SendGrid's software. And they really believe in evangelizing the power of their software, and they do that through a group of employees called developer evangelists that basically travel the world going to tech conferences, hackathons, meetups, all kinds of events, working with companies closely to not only work on the SendGrid product, but also to work on all kinds of fun other technical products to just showcase that, hey, we're a really interesting group of people. We love building stuff, and if you ever encounter a need for email, we should be the first guys that you call.
And really, they are the first guys that you call because of it. And it's the experiences that they create on their own with the help of SendGrid. It's really, once again, empowering employees to create meaningful experiences.
So they do a couple things, that we'd like to talk about. Again, these developer evangelists and their team is distributed across 4 or 5 offices globally.
4, 5, I think.
I think 5 offices. But once a year, they make sure that they bring everybody to Mexico. They do it every year in Mexico. They do a bunch of team building exercises. They have workshops. And they're making sure that even though they're distributed and they're all over the place, a lot of times these guys work solo where they're, essentially traveling, to the far corners of the globe to go to these tech conferences. They want to make sure that they feel like they're a part of a company.
And this is something that is new to the work environment. Taylor and I actually had an experience with a potential recruit employee that we lost because we weren't open to the idea of this remote working. And this is something, especially in technologies these days, that is absolutely huge. So SendGrid is one of the first to really do this, and they have perfected this. And the fact that they create this amazing experience, bringing everyone together, building this team, even though they're all around the world, they bring everyone together to build this team is just absolutely awesome.
I think too, one of the things they do is they bring them together and then they send them off at the end, and they're basically sent out into the world, and they're told to recreate the experience that SendGrid created for them anywhere that they go.
With the help of SendGrid.
Exactly. Yeah. So the two photos on the right are actually of I and Robin, who's a developer evangelist at SendGrid, getting tattooed. And Robin actually bought me a tattoo at a tech conference one time because I didn't have any money, and he thought it would be fun, and SendGrid paid for it. And that's essentially turned me into a developer evangelist for SendGrid. I reference a ton of new technical hires that are looking for jobs to go apply there. Anyone that's having an email problem, they're the first guys I would send them to. And you know, Robin and I have become great friends, and it's because he created this really wild and wacky experience for me one time at a conference, and they do this repetitively.
Oh, there's countless stories of SendGrid employees doing this.
So another example of something that Robin pulled off with another developer evangelist there called Kanal is they basically are, for whatever reason, obsessed with samosas and mimosas. So a samosa is like an Indian hot pocket if you've never seen one. So they had this idea to basically run a talk about email and their services and have it be catered by SendGrid with samosas and mimosas. So I think they actually do this on an ongoing basis now. And this is an experience that SendGrid basically has empowered them to create. So they're talking about email, something that's not very exciting, but they're doing it in a really fun and innovative way, and they're given ownership to basically create this event on their own. And SendGrid says, "Hey guys, make this happen. You know, if you think it's a good idea," and it's worked extremely well.
And that's what I was just about to say. Is I can guarantee that an event like this is tenfold more successful than an event that wouldn't be put on by the employees. They're stepping outside the box here. They're doing something that they love in a different format to reach the right audience, and they do a great job of it. So, once again, you might not be able to send everybody to Mexico. Taylor, what can you do?
I think the key here is that let your employees build something else for a day. You know, give them an opportunity to work on an experience or be a part of something that doesn't have to do with your core business, or at least is only tangentially related back to it.
That's what we always say here. We believe a really great culture, very great startup culture, but we all work on different things outside of our perfected skill set because it's fun. It's fun, and it's something new and exciting, and it really is.
I think there's two really simple ways you can do this. The one is encourage your employees or provide them a platform from which they can teach. This is something that SendGrid does very well. They're constantly sending their developer evangelists to college campuses to work with kids. Yeah. It's something that we do here. We work with a local organization called Computer Mentors, where about twice a quarter we'll go out, we'll do a presentation on design or sales or development, and it gives us a chance not only to interact with the local community, to tap into the rising talent in the community, but to just frame our skill set in a bit of a different point of view.
And on top of all that, you're now thinking in a different way. So you're being more creative, you're being more innovative, and you're using a different part of your brain that you don't even realize that you're accessing at that point.
The other thing you can do that we would be happy to talk to you more about is creating some kind of hackathon or design challenge over a 24-hour or weekend period where you basically create a framework for employees to create something with the skills that they have that's not your core business. Facebook's a big proponent of this where, once a quarter they'll have people come together, you can build whatever you want, and you'll be amazed at the stuff that comes out of it, stuff that really can provide real value to your day-to-day business. And again, we'd be happy to chat with you about how you can set something like that up.
So we've talked about defining meaning and creating meaning. We've talked about experiences. Let's talk about where and how you're going to reach the millennial talent that we're talking about here.
So I think the key is knowing the battlefield. We find that most companies now have a social presence. Most companies are on Facebook or Twitter at the very least. Many have a culture page. But there's a lot of different avenues we think you can go down to really try and find and recruit young talent that are not very heavily tapped into. And we're gonna kind of touch on those here. So the first thing I think that everyone should be doing, if they're not already, is making sure you have a very robust career page or culture page, somewhere that's defining what your meaning is.
Honestly, this is almost a necessity these days. If you go to any company that is successful in this war right now, they have a great cultures page, usually connected to their careers page. With that being said, I've also seen great culture pages on Facebook.
Absolutely. And I think it just ties into our two earlier points. It's talking about what the work with you means and the experiences that you can provide.
And truly, the best way to do this is by getting employee stories. So going back to the storytelling piece, having your employees tell the stories about what it's like to work at your company through picture and video, that's invaluable. That's going to be your hardest hitting piece of content right there. These pages can be made by your IT team. They can be made by, there's several companies that do this. We'll touch on after the presentation on how WeView can actually help you create one of those pages, but we'll get into that later.
So 3 recruiting platforms that we use, 2 of which we hope you're looking at or have used before are LinkedIn and Glassdoor. But the third one, AngelList, is one that we find a lot of talent through. We believe is a pretty untapped resource. We're almost hesitant to tell you about it. But basically it's a crowdfunding platform for equity. So it basically allows startups to get funding similar to Kickstarter, but for equity. But the thing that's awesome about it is any company can go and kind of list themselves as a startup. And once you do that, you can post a job. And from there, you can see individuals that have either worked for other startups or have created a profile on AngelList as an individual. They tag themselves with their skill set. They talk about not only what they're looking to do, but where they're willing to do it. Mm-hmm. So we'll filter based on, hey, people that live in San Francisco today but might be interested in Florida. We type up a little paragraph about how we'd love to tell you more about our vision and what we're doing, and we go through and we just find a bunch of candidates and send them a quick note. It's very similar to the way that people recruit on LinkedIn, but it's a fairly untapped resource. I know that they do kind of put up some restrictions if you start to spam it, but we've never really had a problem with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been one of our most successful avenues for recruiting. I'd also like to touch on Glassdoor. I'm sure all of you are familiar with Glassdoor. One thing that we always like to tell customers is that have employees, current employees, ex-employees, anybody that's on good terms with the company, go and leave a review on Glassdoor. This is extremely powerful for millennials because millennials want to see and know from experienced people what it's like to be at that company. Writing a review is really a great way to do this.
Absolutely. And I think, too, if you haven't tried to post a paid ad on Glassdoor, we've just started doing that recently. They're relatively inexpensive compared to some of the other platforms, and we got a lot of great ROI for that. The other thing that we do want to hint at is during your interview process, what we hear from a lot of our friends, a lot of people in our demographic, is that companies don't return emails. They drop off during the application process, almost to the point where it's extremely rude and insulting.
It is rude. It's not even almost. It's extremely rude.
So what we would recommend, and a promise that we made ourselves before we ever started hiring anyone, is that return emails to every applicant. If you have a ton of applicants, set up a random email address with an autoresponder saying, thanks for applying, we'll get back to you if we're interested. And if you interview someone, absolutely follow up with them personally. If you're interviewing a ton of people, just copy and paste something that makes it sound personal. And the thing that we do as well is we also we refer a lot of great talent that we can't find a place for to some of our ally companies in the region. So if there's someone that we found that we thought was very skilled and we really liked, but just wasn't quite the right fit for us, we have a handful of other companies we know are always looking that we will refer them out to. So not only are we getting talent back from those companies, but we're also building up a rapport and relationship with the candidate that we could have just rejected and left a bad taste in their mouth. I think that's the goal: is leave people leaving your interview still wishing that they worked for you.
Yes. I mean, there's no reason to burn the bridge, especially with this landscape and the competitiveness out there. There's no reason at all to burn the bridge. So we talked about a lot today. really creating meaningful experiences through culture. We know that not everything that we show could be applicable to your company, not possible. But what we're going to do now is we're going to tell the story of one of our customers, a problem or problems that they had, and then from there, how they used our software solution to solve some of these cultural problems. So the company's name is Vector Learning. They're located down here with us in Tampa, Florida. They're an e-learning company, and they have a great culture. The issue was nobody knew about this culture. Inside of the company, Taylor, you can attest this, it's a cool company. I mean, they have really cool stuff going on.
Yeah, I mean, they absolutely do the first two things that we talked about. I mean, they subscribe meaning to what they're doing. I mean, they're an e-learning company, and on the surface, a lot of their courses and their content is geared around fire and EMS training, healthcare professionals, architects, engineers. It's not what you traditionally consider the most sexy e-learning content, but they tell a different story. Instead of saying, hey, you know, we do boring e-learning platforms, etc. They talk about how, no, we're educating firemen, police officers, healthcare professionals, engineers on safety that actually impacts and saves lives.
And the fact that it's in front of everybody when they go in there right off the bat, they have the cultural reference, people understand that, they realize that, and they work hard because of it.
And I think, too, that they do a great job of providing awesome experiences for their employees that we're going to talk about in a minute. They also make sure that once they get an employee in the door, and this is really important, that they pitch the meaning and they pitch the experiences. And we absolutely do that too. Definitely. You know, half of your initial interview with someone should be you selling them on why your company is great. Because even if they're not a great fit, they're going to come out of that interview and they're going to tell someone else about how, man, I really wish I would have got that job because this company is awesome.
Definitely. So let's go into some of their experiences that they have had. First one that we want to look at is their Habitat Build Day. This company is very active in the community. They do a lot of community service. They purchased our application, and now they're able to crowdsource pictures and videos from any of their employees that are at this Habitat Build Day.
So basically what they do is they go in and they any employee that wants to can come and they physically build a house for the day.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what they do.
So they're providing this experience that not only is building something like we talked about, but it's building something that impacts the community. It's something that showcases their education, their learning, allows their employees to learn a new skill. I mean, it checks off all the boxes.
And their HR manager was, the issue that she came to us with was they were constantly doing these things, but nobody knew they were doing them. They weren't getting these experiences out there. So you can be having these things, but you really need to leverage this content. And the fact that they now are gathering picture and video from all of their employees through this crowdsourced application makes it extremely easy for them now to take that content and use it for recruiting. This was a really fun, really cool competition that they ran inside their office. This is an experience that they created. Nothing too crazy, not much money went into this. What they did was a Where is Waldo competition. They made a little cutout of Waldo, a cardboard cutout, and one person started it. They placed it around the office. The next person would find it based off of the picture that they posted on the WeView app. They would find the Waldo and they would take it to another place, take a picture with it, put the picture up on WeView, and then the next person would have to go and find that Waldo. It got to the point where the CEO of the company came back from lunch and he saw 12 people looking under desks for the Waldo. If that's not an engaging experience on a Wednesday afternoon to get somebody through hump day, then I don't know what is, honestly. And we have seen countless examples of how you can create meaning without going to Mexico, without doing these crazy things, through digital experiences on this application. Finally, showing off this content. We can create meaningful experiences. We can create value in what we do, but we have to leverage this content. And this was their main issue. They weren't leveraging their content for recruiting new talent. This is what is now their internal facing culture page, which will go external next week. but right now it's an internal portal only.
The app allows them to crowdsource content from any employer on anything that they're doing. It also allows them to create videos about themselves. That's what you'll see in that top middle row there, is new hire videos that their employees have created introducing themselves to the company. The videos at the top are recaps from their events. We also just showcase albums of kind of running content from their multiple office locations. We highlight their core values on this page, and then we also pull in their social streams. So we're showcasing, what people are tweeting about them. Currently, this is just internal facing for them. All of this content individually, though, they're actually leveraging and sharing across social media. So those event recaps, those albums are getting posted to Facebook, getting posted to LinkedIn and Twitter, and people, they're driving traffic back to their careers page. And we're actually in the process, too, of working on putting this page and this content dynamically into their culture page on their website.
So this will become their culture page. So we went in there, we helped them capture, gather, and promote their culture. And really, they have seen a tenfold in terms of recruiting benefit from using this application. And really, it's been great for them. So we'd like to thank everyone for being a part of the webinar today. We do have one more offer on the table. If you email us within the next 15 minutes, we will do a free employer branding consultation. If you email us at info@weview.com, that's the best way to get in touch with us. And then finally, we're going to leave it open right now for any questions. So if anybody wants to ask us any questions, please ask in the question section. I will leave it open for about the next 5 minutes, and we'll answer any questions that anybody has. Thank you very much. So we have a question from Jackie here. She is wondering, so if you do all of this, is that a winning formula for the war for talent? And Jackie, to answer that question, this is going to put you on the right track, put you in a great place to start this trek, I guess you could say, to win the war for talent. As we said before, it's only going to get harder, but these are the types of things that you need to start to do now so that 5 years down the line, when it becomes even harder, you're going to be there.
I think, too, another thing to touch on as well is, there's going back to experiences. There's so many things that you can do for very little time and money that just provide your employees with a platform to go out and be autonomous. Mm-hmm. I think that's a great word. It's just giving your employees the ability to go do things that they wouldn't have otherwise imagined would have been possible at work.
It's empowering people is really what it comes down to. So I think that's all the time we have for today. Once again, please email us at info@weview.com for the 15-minute employer branding consultation. We thank everyone for listening in today. We will be running this again, so check our social and let's stay in touch. Thank you very much.